So now let us consider this. Who created the earth? Who was the one that made the earth round in the first place? Yeah, Christopher Columbus didn't make the earth round. Did he? In fact, he wasn't even the first one to go to the so-called New World, was he? Muslims had been there long before he went. Some of you might like to know, this is trivia. I'm going to give you a little piece of information. It'll be right next to worthless, but still interesting. My ancestors came from Spain. Our name was Ustez. They changed it to Estes after they became Christians in the Middle Ages, when they moved to England. Now, when they were there, and they were the Ustez, which is professors or teachers of Muslim Spain, at that time, they had already been over to the New World. The three ships that Christopher Columbus went over on, all three of these ships had previously belonged to the Muslims. And when he wanted to go, and he couldn't get anybody to listen to him except the Queen, which was Queen Isabella. When he wanted to go, this was all they would give him, is these three ships, and one of them was so old and so bad shape, it was actually sinking. And they were bailing water on it all the time. Did you know that? But they were free ships. After all, these guys had just taken over the Muslim land. Hey, you want some ships, take those. That's exactly how they did it. But who would want to go with this man on his mission to sail to the end of the earth and fall off? Nobody would want. Would you want to do that? I wouldn't want to do that. It's not a good idea. So where in the world could they find 3 shiploads of people that were suicidal? Well, we know that what to do. We just look at the newspaper. Anytime you need people who are suicidal, you get Muslims. According to them, anyway. And that's exactly what they did. They took the Muslims out of the prisons and filled up these ships. The name of the navigator who went with them to read the maps, because Christopher Columbus couldn't read the maps in another language, it was Muhammad. His name was Muhammad. And the reason that Christopher Columbus couldn't read the maps is they were in Arabic. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want you to think too hard, because you might get a bump in your brain or something. But where do you get maps to places that nobody ever went to before? Never thought of that, did you? Christopher Columbus kept a diary. This is known to be a habit of captains of ships at that time, and he got this idea from who? The first one to make these kinds of diaries while he was traveling was Ibn Battuta. Long before Christopher Columbus, we have the one who came from Morocco, went all the way to India, and even approaching China. He's a great explorer and opened up trade routes and everything by telling people about these things long before Marco Polo. Now I've got my little trivia in there. I'm going to come back to our subject. The people of Spain, that many years ago, 600 years ago, for the most part, were Muslims. Then when these people came in, the Catholics who would come and defeated them, they did believe the earth was flat. And even though people talk about going to the New World or this new place where supposedly all this gold is, they still didn't think about it in terms of being round. Now, you might think today that that's, very ancient in their thinking. These people are very backward. It's backward people, right? But consider this, in the 1950s, we can come up a lot closer to our own time. I remember in the 1950s that when Russia first put that object in outer space, We didn't know what to call it other than what they called it. It was called a Sputnik. They called it a Sputnik. We didn't have a word for it yet. Why? Well, we didn't have it. You don't make a word for something you don't have. But we didn't want to keep saying Sputnik. It was obvious that was Russian. We can't let the Russians be ahead of us, so why don't we come up with satellite? And that's where we got this idea to use this word satellite. Well, okay. But even then, when we finally put a man in outer space, we still had people telling us, you don't really believe that, do you? And when we said we have a man on the moon, they said, oh, please. We don't believe it. So look, you can look at the TV. Back then we had black and white. We had both colors, black and white. You could look at the TV and see a man standing on this white-looking thing. Back then, as I said, we didn't have the color. The moon looked white. And he was standing on it. I remember somebody telling me, say, look at the moon, see it, see it? We told you. It's made out of cream cheese.